Spoken label.
He lurked in the shadows, waiting and hoping she wouldn't take a different route. This was a usual room. He knew that. He knew her.
Ghost of Me, the new book by Amanda Steele, can be found at Amazon, Kobo, Waterstones, and many, many other places. Hi guys, it's Andy N. Thanks today for downloading or streaming yet another episode of Spoken Label. As you may or may not be aware, Spoken Label was started in the beginning of 2006, and currently we have well over 150 sessions recorded since then. Although you can find it on various networks, the full archive is available for streaming and downloading at Spoken Label bandcamp.com. It is a free download or free stream in there, but obviously if you feel like chucking me a few pennies that way, it'd be eternally grateful to help me keep this podcast going and keep improving my equipment, etc. Enjoy. Speak to you soon. Bye bye. Spoken Label.
Hi guys, Andy N, Spoken Label, back in the house. We're on Zoom again today. I've got a wonderful gentleman with me today. And I've been looking forward to this podcast with this gentleman since I booked it about a month and a half ago. Because he's a character. He really is a character. And what I've seen of this gentleman, he sparkles when he comes on the poetry nights because he's just so friendly and funny. I've got Richard Harries with me today. Now, Richard, would you like to introduce yourself to everybody? Tell them who you are, of course, where you're to come from, and what started off your creativity.
Hi, I'm Richard, and it's Harries with an E in the end, like Davis Davies.
Oh, I'm sure I'm right, yeah. Sorry.
No, you said it. You said it fine. It's just if people are Googling, they need an E in the end, you know. I originated in Harrogate. I've lived in Yorkshire all my life. I lived in Harrogate till I was 19. Then I thought I was wildly brave because I moved to Leeds. You know, now people go to Australia and Zambia and all sorts of places. And I thought it was a big deal. I lived in a little town called Morley, and in and around Morley, I got married there. And we had 2 kids, and we now have 2 grandkids. And for 40 odd years, I was in Morley, and then retired to Withensea. So I've gone from North Yorkshire to West Yorkshire to East Yorkshire, and I've missed out south. I don't think I'll be moving again. Around the time I moved here, or maybe a little bit before, so that would be 12 years ago, just as I was retiring, I was challenged by people at work to turn Wordsworth daffodils into some doggerel and to make it amusing about a contractor that we had hired that was meant to be doing grass cutting, and it was a disaster. And I did that, and I got I had people that I barely knew emailing me and texting me from work, and not long after that, my boss, who was a lady, went to Paris, went up the Eiffel Tower and came back and told us this story about how she got engaged he proposed on one knee at the top of the Eiffel Tower. Now, I work for the Sustainable Development Unit, and to them, the worst thing you could do was send 100 cards. So we just had 1 card from the office. And I wrote a poem in the middle of it, because I'd listened to what Louise had said about this proposal, and I got this overwhelming response. Everyone in the office, I had like 56 emails, and I'm thinking, wow, I have a little talent I didn't know about. I'd always written reports and things for work, and I used to work for a record label writing sleeve notes for reissue CDs. Wow. So that was freelance, and I worked for about 5 or 6 labels, but it was older stuff, Sandy Shaw, Helen Shapiro, that sort of thing. So I just thought, well, I've got this talent, I'd better start writing some, and I did start writing them, and I had no idea why. And when we got to Withensea, we went to a folk club, and I realised that various people were doing spoken word. But it wasn't their own. It was people like Kenneth Williams and Maria Edgar who wrote, Albert and the Lion and things like that. And they didn't say, this isn't mine. They just did them. And I thought, well, this is a bit odd. I could do my own stuff here. And so the next time we went, I stood up and did some of my very early poems. And I was immediately invited to an open mic. Well, I didn't know anything about all the open mic system. Went to the open mic the following week, was invited to a working men's club in Hull. And from there, was invited to the Freedom Festival. And 8 weeks after I stood at a folk club, not knowing really what I was doing, I was standing in a huge tent at the Freedom Festival reciting poetry. And they'd heard one of my early poems, Pirate Izzy, which is about my granddaughters.
I was
and
going to ask you about that next, actually, as well. So we'll come on to that in a minute. Yeah.
Right. Well, they got this plan in Hull. In the centre, all the phone boxes were marked, and if you went in them, you picked it up and you heard me reciting Pirate Izzy. So it was 8 weeks from walking into Keyingham Folk Club to being a voice on the Freedom Festival, and it was just astonishing and surprising. I had no idea about all the scene, and I got into it very quickly, and from then on have been at festivals. Particularly I start at Filey Folk Festival the first weekend in May, and I'm booked for festivals usually until the second week of September. And
Wow.
my wife would go on and block off one weekend and write something silly. I said, "What's this?" She says, "We're not doing it. We're not going anywhere. No, say no." So that's me.
Yeah, I can believe that knowing you, Richard. There,
Well,
you're
I said,
a real character, definitely with that. So you can see, like obviously, like you said, people look around, you can see how many festivals you've been in. You do so many. I can see that straight away. But tell us about the first poem then, Pirate Izzy, for your granddaughter, because I've read about this. It says on your website, so in Stairwell Books, it was your first poem, and I'm presuming it wasn't then, if that was the case.
Well, it was a very early one. It was certainly amongst the first five. But I was asked this at a launch event I did, and I think probably the first poem I wrote was a silly little one about my neighbour's cats. But Pirate Izzy was the first major poem where, I mean, I got really good applause and people liked what I did. But you know the sensation when they're stomping the feet and going, "Ah!" And they just love it. Pirate Izzy was the very first. It was the first poem I put on YouTube. I have a YouTube channel, which is which is a fairly major presence. It's had about 140,000 hits, which is, a lot, isn't it?
Rather.
I was amazed when I went over 1,000. I've now got, I think, 48 poems that have had more than 1,000, and one of them's had about 7,000. But which for a little poet in Withensea, I mean, if it was the Stones issuing an unreleased track from '66, I think it might get 147 million hits. But so I'm not thinking that I'm a global star. It was funny, the local paper did put "Richard has gone global," and that was because I happened to say that I'd had one hit from Finland and 3 from Vietnam. Now, that is not a high proportion of the population of Vietnam, but it's amazing what the press can do when you have to be very careful what you say, because they were claiming I was virtually a global superstar because they'd had 3 hits. Yes. But so Pirate Izzy was the very first one put on YouTube, and if a poem, it's had about, I think, 900 hits, and if a poem passes Pirate Izzy, I always think, oh, that's a hit. If it's beaten Pirate Izzy, and it started when my granddaughters were about 4 and 3, and it was one of their birthdays. And their dad was cleaning the wooden floor with one of those spongy mop type things, and so we got on the sofa to get out the way. And then we started playing pirates. And the sofa became the boot. And we, in our time, we have rescued every cushion in both their house and ours, and every soft toy and all sorts of things. There are now 6 Pirate Izzy poems. They save Santa from, a rabidly mad Rudolph who's got ill, and they save the Easter Bunny on another occasion. And they've all done well on YouTube, and people really love them, And they're all except for the latest one, because they're now 11 and 12 and too old probably to pay pirates. But
officially, yeah.
Yes. So, and also I had a new hip. So there was a couple of years where I couldn't let them jump up and down on me. And so that sort of broke the cycle. But all of them are really based on, I mean, I fantasize them, but they're based on what we did, you know. I mean, there's one where we rescue Teddy from the sea. Well, the sea is the floor and he'd fallen off the sofa. So Izzy dived and pretended to rescue him. And so, I mean, they're just fun, lovely, grandparenty, parenty things, you know. Yeah.
Oh, cool. No, sounds great. Fantastic. Now, what I want to ask you about today as well, obviously, because we're here to talk about your book, really, but there's a couple of things I've noticed you've been called before, and I want to ask you about these before we start. Where it says on Stairwell Books, you're also often known as the Bard of Withersea and the activist poet of Hull, having written for the Action of Hull group. Can you tell us a bit about both of these, then, first of all?
Yes. Well, it comes out of Pirate Izzy. I had written Pirate Izzy, and I think the second adventures of Pirate Izzy. And about that time, there started to be a pirate festival in Withensea. And also there's one in Hull. And because I had written pirate poems, they invited me to star there. And I appeared at the Withensea Pirate Festival for, I think, 4 times.
Wow.
And they called me the Bard of Withensea. And they kept announcing me as the Bard of Withensea. And it kind of stuck. And people call me it. I don't object, and I don't promote it or anything. But, I mean, yes, I usually get called that. And there is a Bard of Holderness, which is the general area, you know, and he's different. And excellent, and he is a songwriter and sings folk tunes and things. Then the activist poet of Hull, I got involved in several rallies about helping refugees, and I did some events to help raise money for refugees who came to Hull that had no English, and we provided interpreters for them. And then the Wilberforce Society asked me to help fundraise for the illumination of the. We've got a huge statue in Hull, and it is of Wilberforce, the man who illuminated the world by helping to get rid of slavery. And they won't put a few light bulbs around him, so we are trying to get that illuminated so it's like a beacon at night. Lord Line Building, which is a historic, brilliant old maritime building, is now falling down. It's subject to many campaigns, and the Action for Hull asked me to write a poem about it, which I did. And they had this event in this marvellous old undertaker's place, which is meant to be the most haunted in Hull. And when I wasn't there doing my poem, they had filmed me. And so they had me as a hologram on a wall. Now, there's not many people come on and say I was a 24-hour hologram. And there were various other campaigns that I got involved with. And I was asked to go and perform at the Red Shed readings at Wakefield, which is a great honour, and I was really blown away. And when I got there, I was announced as the activist poet of Hull. And I thought, well, I'm glad I've got to send. I had one serious poem with me. I think about Beverley in Hull. We have this place, which was the actual first place that King Charles was refused entry. And we had the armory here, so it was around Heads and Cavalier type thing. And when they were excavating for a shopping centre about 20 years ago, they discovered the actual gate, Beverley Gate. Now, if this was in York or Beverley, it would be protected, and it would you'd have a tour guide taking you around it because it's Hull. They were going to concrete over it and put some hot dog stands on. So we had to fight for that, and it's now been preserved, and it's brilliant. So people power. So because of things like that, and there's lots of others, I do get involved, and I get asked to be involved. I helped at a drug rehab place, and so. It appears that some people call me the activist poet of Hobart. As I say, when I went to Red Shed readings, I thought I was glad they didn't tell me they were going to call me that, because I could have just been doing poems about burping, farting, and falling downstairs for all they knew. Not very activist.
No, it may not have been the best set that would be the activist poet, Richard.
So that's how it's happened, and I don't object to them, and I don't really own them exactly. If I get caught that, I'm fine,
Yeah, and of course, I think it's the way it goes sometimes, that people call you things like that. And it's not an insult, you just get a bit taken back sometimes. And I think when you're that respected, I'm always a believer. Take it, definitely. So, sounds great. So, right. Okay.
I'm sure that both of them meant it in a friendly, loving way. So,
yeah.
Fine.
No, I can believe you straight. There's no malicious at all with that. I see a mile off that. Okay, now I want to talk to you today about your book, actually, as well. Because as we've hinted at before, now we're only on audio today, but if people will see, Richard's actually showing his book up at the moment.
I'm waving it around, hopefully.
That's your best way, mate. Now, did I read this correctly, Richard? Is this your debut book?
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
And I am, in a few weeks' time, 69.
Now, really?
And the thing is that I'm not an expert on this, but I don't know any other poets of my age who are getting their first book. The older poets that are publishing have been publishing sometimes for decades, and I am blown away completely and very, very grateful to have this book out. It's just stunning.
Oh, yeah. Now, I know, obviously, it's through Rose Drew's publication, Stairwell Books. So tell us about that then, first of all. How did you meet Rose then?
Well, I appeared at the York Literature Festival, and she was coordinating the event. And I wrote a poem called A Tale of Warning for Men. And it's about my experiences of male breast cancer. I didn't have it, but I had a scare. So I had to go to the hospital, have all the procedures, and it was an event with lots of poets, some extremely well-known ones and really good ones. And I was honoured to share a stage with them. And I performed, I think, 3 poems, one of which was A Tale of Warning for Men. And at the end of the entire event, Rose said, "Wow," and she's American, I can't do American accents, but "Wow, this has been a marvellous day. You've all been fantastic. Wasn't Richard's poem about male breast cancer stunning?"
Wow.
And I expected her to carry on and say Andy's and Amanda's and Mary's and Fred's, and she singled me out. And I was absolutely stunned. And I've just realised I don't have to look at the camera now. I've been looking at the camera rather than you. And so when we were having nibbles and a drink, I went over and said, "Oh, would you like to, if you like my poetry so much, would you like to publish it?" And she said, "No." And I said, "Oh, right." And I go to a lot of events in York. It's an hour or something from us, and it's a really brilliant place. And it's been in my life I used to live in Leeds and go there, went there from Harrogate, and my daughter lived there for a long time. And so we habitually go to York, and you meet Rose and you perform at her events. And we had various conversations, and she said, "How do I know you'll sell? I'm a small independent company, and I blah, blah, blah." And so I was kind of hopeful. I've been talking to other companies, trying to get them interested in getting nibbles, And then at Easter 2019, I was invited to appear at a community centre in the middle of Hull bang near the railway station. And I went along, and when I went in, somebody said, "You must be very flattered to be asked here." And I said, "Well, I'm always flattered to be asked." He said, don't you understand this is a youth culture event? And I'm 69 shortly. And there were big pictures hand-drawn by a local artist, a student, and I was presented with them, and there were posters of me, and there were 6 acts on. And she said, "Haven't you been told?" 18 to 20-year-olds went out round gigs in Hull and brought back 30 names of people they thought were great. And then we traced you all on YouTube and watched you, and they voted. And the 6 that were voted for are here tonight. I said, now I'm honoured. And when I went into the green room, I was the only person over 25. They thought I brought the biscuits and coffee in. They were saying, have you come without the snap? Where's the drinks? Old man, are you the cleaner? Are you the caretaker? And there were rap bands, and also it wasn't poetry. I had no other poet. I had been selected, so I don't know what they'd seen. I only found I'd been booked for about 6 months. I only found out on the Monday when I got to this email saying, "Please do come early for the BBC sound checks." And I said, "BBC?" Oh, and it was on BBC Radio Humberside. It wasn't global or anything, although you can get the internet everywhere. My nephew in Munich listened to it. But I was on with, I don't know if you know Kofi Smiles, who is the great success of the City of Culture, and he's now a DJ on BBC Radio Humberside. And he introduced us all, and I had 20 minutes and gave it my all. And the next day, Rose contacted me and said, "Now we'll publish you."
Yay.
So that's the full story.
Brilliant.
And it was lovely that it came from her rather than me just nagging, as I had done. She keeps telling people I wore her down. But she now does actually say she's glad I wore her down.
Oh, definitely that. Now, I'll say, why is the book called Awakening then, first of all, then?
Well, Awakening is a poem, and it's about a large stone, a boulder, that wakes up and looks at the planet and sees the destruction that has happened since last year when the dinosaurs were. And it wonders whether to cause a volcano and destroy mankind, but decides just to go back to sleep for a couple of million years, that mankind will manage to destroy itself. And I got such stonking reaction to it. And I had a friend, well, he's a fan. It's strange saying he's a fan, but he follows me around and comes to all my events. So, he's a fan. He drives miles out of his way,
Wow.
He sent me an email, which, if it was printed off, would be like 4 sheets of A4, raving about this poem and saying how important it was, and it should be on every ecological site and every, Save the Planet site. I should tell Greenpeace about it. And he just completely overwhelmed me. And I thought, wow, this is a good title for the book. And also, I have a really good mate who I do a lot of open mics and raise money for the new Withensea Pier. And I also am deputy chair of a festival called Withstock. And one of my closest friends on the planet is a brilliant singer-songwriter. He can whistle, he can do anything, and he is a fantastic artist. So I let him loose on this picture of mankind and destruction and the big boulder, and it's a stunning cover. So yes, because there's a brilliant poet in Hull called Catherine Scott who is published, and I went to one of her events, and she held up a book, and it had a big picture of a cockerel, and she has a very funny poem about this cockerel that attacks her, and she said, "You need to get an image from one of your poems to really make the book attractive." And I thought, well, this is, I've got people raving about this, saying how stonkingly wonderful it is, what a brilliant poem it is. And it just seems to suit the cover. So I thought that's why I chose it. Yes.
Brilliant. If I look at it, it does look a fantastic book, what you've done there. Now, is it correct then that the book is a selection of your poems that you wrote over the past 10 years or so, then, is it?
Yes. I looked at my poems and I chose a pool of about 80 that I thought were, I don't think I mean best. I mean things that really moved me. And I wanted to be a very personal book about, because I can't write if I'm bored about a subject. I can't get somebody to come and say, write to me about Tai Chi or something. If I'm moved, if I'm angry, happy, joyous, furious, enraged, whatever, I have to be moved, and then I can write. So I chose things that were important to me, and I try to represent all that I do, because I write a lot of children's poems. I write historical ones. I write very angry political ones. I write very daft, silly situation comedy ones, which are, basically most of them are true about my life, because my life is a disaster area anyway. So you don't have to make up much that way. I write fiction for some, but most of the anecdotal comedy is just, documentary true.
Brilliant.
So I tried to represent it all, and I selected a historical one, which, some people, I don't perform them much because, if you're in a pub and there's 50 people, 35 of them may not know who you're talking about. But this one, it does relate to now. So I felt it was good to put in. So I put one historical one in. Yeah. And the other thing, I do a lot of comedy, and obviously they can't see me, but I wave my arms a lot. I talk with my hands, and I pull silly faces and things like that, so I was very worried about comedy, so I only put 2 comedy ones in, but people have loved them, so they work on the page. But I didn't know that, you have to, it's like when you write some poems, you don't know. I don't do any that I think are awful. I do write awful ones. I bin them, but some don't work out. But you can perform 2 or 3 poems on a night that are new, and one of them will go down ecstatically, and you think, oh wow, that one works better than the others. The others are good, they're nice, but this one is cracking, and likewise, until I've got reaction for the book, I didn't know whether the comedy in particular would work on the page, but it does.
Oh, cool. Now, I've done a couple of things I want to talk to you today about. Cover on Richard before I let you read a few poems out for us. I know obviously under lockdown, you tell me off mic before, obviously like all of us, you've struggled a bit, haven't you? Because your granddaughters had to set you up with equipment because you do readings online. Tell us about that. Well, I think it's a lovely story that you told me before.
Well, what is odd is the moment Johnson announced lockdown, and of course until then we all thought it wasn't going to be as bad as it has been. Firstly, our central heating failed within an hour, and we had no hot water. So the very first person to enter our house was a plumber, and then I realized that the Zoom facility on my laptop, after about 7 minutes of listening, the volume lowered, and so I had a sound card issue. Well, normally you would just write to PC World and get it sorted, but you were locked down, and you would, I have an immunity issue, so we couldn't. So I couldn't join in any Zoom meetings. Now, there were some that you could send a video to, so I did that, to keep in contact. And when my 11-year-old granddaughter realized that I was a bit stranded, and of course I was on a 15-year-old Tesco mobile, which was pay as you go, and all you could do on it was call and text.
Oh, my dad's got one of them.
And it was held together by sellotape. So my daughter and her family got me this posh Huawei thing that does everything, and they set it up. So I've got everything on it, and some of these things I don't even know what they are. I've never used them. I've that many apps and symbols.
Completely.
So that was then posted to me, and then this Christmas, this I'm talking to you on, is a portal, and it's really, really good. And I can get to any meeting on it and hear everyone so clearly, so it's good. So yes, it's my family, my granddaughters have sort of sorted me out.
Yeah, families are very good at that, definitely. Because I've not got down to go see my dad since this year yet. But I've got an 11-year-old nephew from my sister, who now he's 12 now, and he's gone along fixed my dad's mobile. He has and got him set up on Zoom as well. So families are good for that, definitely. So
yeah, well, we have some very good neighbours, and the lad is 14, and it's only just this weekend that he's been allowed to come over. He was staying with his dad in Hull. His mum's in Withensea, and so he's coming over next weekend if there's any decent weather and it's not snowing. And I keep sending him messages, and he's got a great long list of what to do. And I'll slip him some money, and he will have everything sorted, because I've got various things that, for some reason, I'm on Windows 10, and all the videos have moved. I can't find them. Yeah. He'll find them in 2 seconds. There's no point me spending 2 hours looking for them when he will come here and go, and
found them,
have it. It's like in normal times. If I'm in a cafe or something, and something's gone wrong with my mobile, I would just turn around and look around and say, any young person here? And they just sort it in 2 seconds, wouldn't they?
Yeah, no, that's true. That's true. I can agree with that one. Now, obviously, last thing but one I want to talk to you today about, Richard. I know you've just started getting provisionally taking bookings again for festivals, haven't you, at the moment?
Yes, and not with any great belief that they'll happen.
No,
I mean, I'm sure Joe Johnson and co. Are quite capable of just changing the rules 2 days before they happen. So one of them is not with stock, but it's just something that we're trying to organise for the town. We don't want it to be known as Woodstock and have 10,000 people come here. We don't want that.
Not this year. No.
It's almost a secret. And instead of a huge marquee, I'm having an upstairs room in a community centre, and we'll all be socially distanced, and the regulations will be looked at. So that's happening. And I've been booked for a cafe event, because the only event that I've done since March 2020, in summer we were allowed to socialise, weren't we? We were allowed to go out for a few weeks between lockdowns. And in August, having been cocooning, I was invited to do a beach event, and that was 10 o'clock at night, reading by the light of a huge bonfire.
Wow!
Wow! That's the only event I've done. And I took a fold-up deck chair and a travel rug and sat on it, and I said, "This travel rug is my space. No one come near." So I socially distanced and didn't go anywhere near anyone, which was very difficult because I'm a very sort of tactile, huggy type person. It's it's
completely, yeah.
And so it's really, really, really difficult. So that's the only actual event I've done. But I've said I will do this cafe event if he can make it outdoors and socially distance and things like that. And I am starting to get inquiries, and I've been offered one in autumn, which I haven't accepted or anything yet. I still want to see what's going on. But I've been there at this festival for 7 years, so they'll have me if I make myself available, I'll be fine there.
Great. Well, fingers crossed for you in all of them. Now, last thing, Richard, of course, before we get into a few poems for us, is if people want to find out more about you, where are the best going?
Well, if they want to find
Yeah.
The book.
Find out more about.
Stairwell,
First of all, the book.
Stairwell
Yeah.
Books.
Yeah.
Or they could also Google Richard Harries' book launch event, which is on YouTube, and it's had 240 hits, which is amazing because it's an hour and a quarter long, and I think you've got to want to watch it to see it at that length.
Yeah.
Or if they want to look at my poems, RC Poems, that's Arthur Richard, C for Charles Poems, all one word, are on YouTube. They've had about 140,000 hits, and there's about 300 of them on. So you can browse that, and if you fancy just look at the title, something like Modern Slavery will appeal to people. Something like the Deathbed Thoughts of Catherine of Aragon will only appeal to the people who want to watch it. So, there's all sorts, and you can just look through it. On Facebook, my story poems for children are all the children's stories together. So I'm on Facebook, Richard Harries, Harries, and there you go. So that's really how you find me.
Brilliant. Well, that covers all my questions today, Richard. So we're going to take a quick break now. It's been brilliant today. I've really enjoyed this. Thank you. So we'll let you get composed, and we'll be back in 2 shakes of eyes, everybody, when Richard's going to do a few pieces for us. So hang around. I love Richard's work. See you all in a minute.
Spoken, mate.
Hi, guys. Yes, we are still here with Richard. He's going to do 4 poems for us. Over to you, mate.
I'm going to do a sad one, really. I came downstairs one morning and turned the television on, and there was an image of David Bowie. And I expected to be hearing about a hit album, a hit tour, something like that. And this is called On David Bowie Passing. So he had a new album out, causing a fuss, getting rave reviews, and a new single that was a huge success already too. He's been around so long, always changing, reinventing, always making comebacks, when he'd never actually been away. My first memory of him is Major Tom, startling on Top of the Pops. So many brilliant things through the decades. He has truly touched the lives of millions and been adored. His music will last eternally. He will remain adored. Unique, no one like him, an ever-changing chameleon, visually, artistically, musically. I got up late, overslept, turned on the TV. Philip Schofield sat there looking sad, a picture of Bowie illuminating the screen. Oh, his album's #1, is it? I thought, and then the words announcing his death came. I could not comprehend this. I had been expecting a tour. My brain would not accept this dreadful news. It took a long time for the words to sink in, for me to accept this tragedy. A man to be mourned the world over, leaving us far too soon. And you see, that's what I mean. I can write about things that move me. And obviously, that was shock. Then a very recent one written in lockdown. I haven't written a huge amount, but some. And this is called Friendship Hotel. Friendship is like a hotel. Some check in and are mean, negative, determined to complain, toxic, cut them out, refuse to let them book in again. Others check in briefly, would never be staying long, but fun, happy people. Enjoy them while you can, even if you know they won't book a return. Then there are those that arrive, and they are there for a long time. Nurture them and have fun with them. They may not be there forever, and things and circumstances change. Enjoy them while they are booking in. Then there are lifers, the true friends, the ones that are there for you, have fun with you, but when you need them, they're always there in good times and in bad. Let them book in your life long and count yourself fortunate that they are there. I've got a very short little one that I'd quite like to do if I can. Oh, yes. This is a true tale. I used to be a school governor, and the headmaster was very, very nice, but sometimes said inappropriate things. And this is the headmaster's error. a new black colleague to meet the other governors at school. The head introduced me. This is Richard, the racist governor. We all looked aghast or laughed. He looked confused. What did I say? Well, maybe you meant Richard, the governor with responsibility for race issues, said I, and told him what he had actually said. I think that for one moment he wished he was dead.
Oh, that's very you, that one, mate. That's very you.
Yes. Now, one from my book, and you'll see why it's special to me, A Lesson Learnt. As a child, I did what I was told back then you did. But when I was 10, I was watching TV together with my family, as you did back then. Tennis was on, Wimbledon. My mum, like Maria Bueno, said she was elegant, pretty, had class. A match was starting. Women's tennis. On walked a short woman, not glamorous, not wearing lace like Maria Bueno. She walked on determinedly, defiantly, wearing colour. Only a wristband or something like that. A first at Wimbledon. Rosie Casals. It caused a fuss, shock, horror. She was sent off to change. She was timed. Something stirred in me. I learnt I could disobey. I could protest. Did not have to accept. Thank you, Rosie Casals.
Tremendous. Okay. Should we do one more, Richard, then, let you finish off on one more, mate?
Yes. This is my latest poem, and it's been getting fantastic reaction at open mics. And it took me an awful long time to write and research, and it's called George Stinney. In 1944, which seems so long ago, but it is within my sister's lifetime, and just 8 years before I was born, in America, the land of the free, a 14-year-old black boy was executed for the murder of 2 little girls. He was placed in the electric chair, had to be seated on a large Bible used as a booster seat. He was so small. The girls were battered to death. Their bodies were dumped in a ditch. The boy was George Stinney. He had spoken to them that day as they passed his house. He directed them to where they could pick certain flowers. That is all that was proven. He was arrested and taken from his parents, allowed no solicitor, even though the Sixth Amendment guarantees him one, allowed no visits from his family. They could not agree on the description of the murder weapon, and there was no blood found on George. At his trial, his counsel was a white politician campaigning for election in a town full of hatred where lynching was threatened. He cross-examined no one. George was alibied by his sisters, which they still swear is the truth. Yes, this is so close in time that some of the witnesses are still alive. The trial lasted just 81 days after the murders, lasted 1.5 hours. The all-white jury were out 10 minutes. 1,000 whites packed the courtroom, not one black person allowed in. George was not allowed to see his parents until after his conviction. In America, the land of the free. At the trial, they allowed discussion of rape and even necrophilia, even though post-mortems pronounced the girls to be virgins. The trial papers have disappeared, as has an alleged confession, one made by a 14-year-old boy deprived of contact with parents or counsel. They killed him with a too large hood that allowed the tears flowing to be seen. His dad was allowed to approach and speak to him just before he died. The only family contact he had had since his arrest. This was in 1944 in America. He was buried in an unmarked grave. 70 years later, the conviction was overturned for lack of evidence and for being tainted with racism. They never found the murder weapons. How could a child hide metal objects so thoroughly? He could not. A real murder ran free while they murdered another child. This was in America. George died because he was black. If anyone can't comprehend why Black Lives Matters, why we need to take the knee, they should research George Stinney. No one says other lives do not matter. What they say in America in particular, there is good reason to fear your early death if you are black. And that should never have been and can no longer be.
Excellent stuff to finish off with that, Richard.
And I have performed it 3 times, and it's shorter than the time allocated, but I can't follow that with anything.
No.
I say sorry. That's me for the day, and I can't start it with a funny poem and then go on to George. It's just not respectful. So
no, that is
when I come on, I just do that, and there's people crying and looking in shock. And I didn't know about this case. It's a famous case. It's well documented. But of course, it happened before I was born. And it was only when George Floyd died that I was Googling away, as you do, when something moves and enrages you. And this came, and I just read it with incredulity. And I thought, 1944 is a long time ago. Then I thought, hang on a minute, my sister was here in 1944. Wow. And I was, and she'd by no means... Well, she's 77, but I mean, she's very active. She's a minister and gets out and about all the time. And I thought, how would the community have been, and how would the parents have been? And a little 7-year-old girl alibying her brother and knowing it was the truth, and then they kill him, and she will have lived with that, and she's lived to old age. And
it's been tortured by
Yeah, there's another whole poem in that, isn't there?
Yeah.
But yes. Yeah. Anyway, so there you are. That's a bit of variety. I do children's poems. I do silly comedy. Do you want me to do a shortish comedy one?
Yeah, do one more then. One more to finish off with, and yeah, that'd be good today.
Well, this is one. This is not my most popular on YouTube, but my most popular in performance. I get asked for it every time. It's called Good Intentions, and it's true. I know my woman well. I'm able to buy for her just swell. I know what jewellery she likes. That's courage. You say, yikes. So yesterday I went into town. I did not buy a gown. No, I saw a blouse and a stole that matched. And it is my goal to try and please my beloved wife and be thoughtful throughout life. So I did what many men have not got the courage to do, but I looked at the sizes and I knew they'd fit my beloved one. So I did what I knew I should have done. I went inside that charity shop and did buy both of these great tops. Now, this was quite inconvenient for me because I could not now buy fresh veg for tea. In fact, I'd have to make a second trip to the shop to get enough food to chop so we could have some food that was so good. But this I was quite prepared to do, looking forward to the praise and appreciation that I was due. I got home and showed them off proudly. She to me did exclaim loudly, "Oh my, just why did you get these tops? They were complete flops. You should not have paid cash there. That was daft and rash. Go on, tell me why," said I with a sigh. "Well, last Friday I donated them, not wanting to wear them again. You were with me that day when I gave them away, and last but not least of all, you had the gall to not have noticed and again she did sigh, had been wearing them for the past 4 years. Honestly, you could drive me to tears. All I could say was, oops, and why I kind of remember them now." And I did that at a very posh little festival called Swanland, which is north of Hull. And everyone came in their Porsches and Daimlers. And at the charity shop line, I had this huge laughter. For about 20 seconds, they stomped the floor. And I thought they were going to fall off chairs because, of course, they'd never known anyone who'd gone into a charity shop, never mind admitted it. And so it's very difficult to remember where you are in the poem and the rhythm. And then afterwards, this little man in a very nattily dressed with an Armani suit and a Valentino tie came up and said, "I have a very similar story." And I said, "Oh, do you?" He said, "Yes. I spent £847 on a Hermes handbag for my wife, and she didn't like it." And I said, "Yeah, that's very similar to me and £4 for carrots."
Brilliant.
So it kind of has become part of the poem, that as well. I just had it on because it was comparing. And who's got £847 for a bloody handbag? I mean, you can still snag it. You can still snag it, tear it, drop it, lose it, or you could, spill on it.
Wow, no, brilliant. It's
Amazing.
been tremendous today, Richard. Thank you today for this, mate. You've been a fantastic near hour of recording this, so I'm looking forward to playing this one back. So thank you again today, mate, for this. It's been a massive
And
pleasure.
do feel free to edit, and cut it down a bit.
Oh, I
or
will.
whatever.
Oh, don't worry, I will.
Yeah.
Right,
It's
serious
lovely
enough.
to talk to you.
Yeah,
Because when
hang
we
around,
meet at
mate.
these-
Hang around. I need to quick word you off mic anyway. So, but let's get the recorded, finished. I'll speak to you then. Okay. So, thank you again today, Richard. I've loved this.
That's
mate.
fine. It'll be really good. Thank you. The book's done really fine. It went straight into profit, and she's happy, and she's offered me more. So,
Rock and roll. Right, hang around, mate. Okay. As Don
Cheers.
Callis says,
Bye-bye.
guys and girls, stay safe and stay on.
Spoken, mate.